Clerk would take the call. The amendment fails. Any other amendment to the gentleman from Anne Arundel in the annex?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. I've got an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 833924. Amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1.
Colleagues, what this amendment does, it just requests that if you were to be put on this permanent absentee ballot list, that a voter must submit their application in person and with a government-issued ID. We have worked with it's already in code that the transportation article will allow someone to get an ID for the purposes of voting for free. Ladies and gentlemen, I think in these extremely emotional and charged times, we should seek common ground on beliefs like we did a couple bills ago. It was great to see. We all agree, all Americans who are eligible to vote should have that opportunity, but their ballot should not be stolen or diluted by fraudulent votes. That's a concern for everybody. We should all stand together in unison against voter fraud. One person, one vote, correct? We should be doing everything within our power as a legislative body to restore voter confidence. Is voter confidence a problem? 2016, 42% of every Democrat believed that the election was stolen or fraudulent. Rasmussen poll. Thought you guys loved polls. A little over 70% Republicans believe in 2020 the election had fraudulent outcomes. 1/3 of every Democrat thinks it was possible in 2020. I'll repeat that. In 2020, 1/3 of every Democrat thought fraud was possible. That's huge. One of the things I've continued to hear down here, and yes, this is on the amendment, Madam Speaker, on January 6th, it's been brought up several times in committee on the floor. And I want to be crystal clear on this. And I'm going to take the liberty of speaking for many of my party members, my family, my friends. Not a single one of us condone what happened at the U.S. Capitol. It was disgraceful, destructive, and sickening for the people that breached that U.S. Capitol. None of us believe in that. But to be honest, there were hundreds of thousands of people that showed up just because they wanted to show their support or they felt like they were disenfranchised. We have to stop that. We have to stop dividing everybody. We got to stop dividing ourselves. Anybody can accept an election if they feel like their vote counted and it was done honestly and fair. So what this amendment does is just add another layer of security that your vote counted and the vote was not fraudulent. Without asking for this ID, I fear that there's more fraud to come. The majority leaders stood up and spoke a couple of days ago about the election of 1876. It's one a lot of people might not know about, but it did change the makeup of this country in a bad way for a long time. There was a compromise reached in 1877 between the Republicans in the North for Rutherford B. Hayes and some moderate Democrats from the South. And the deal was the Democrats in the South would allow Rutherford B. Hayes to be the president, but he must take the federal troops out of the South that were defending the 14th and 15th Amendment for the African Americans who wanted that ability to vote. When they were pulled out, it changed this country in a very bad way. Most of you know we struggled for another 100 years, maybe to modern time,
Is the gentleman still on the amendment?
because of one election that was believed to be fraudulent by just about every citizen that voted in 1876. Free for everybody, regardless of the outcome. And I'm hoping that this is what this amendment will do. It doesn't disenfranchise anybody. Matter of fact, there's been studies done by Yale. Over the years, the last 20 years, they said, asking voter ID, and it's held up in the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has upheld voter ID since flagrant examples of fraud have been documented throughout the nation's history. No one claims that there is a voter fraud in every election, but as the Supreme Court said, not only is the risk of voter fraud real, but it could affect the outcome of a very close election. I'm hoping that this amendment will stand to stop some of the fraud so that every one of your votes counts, regardless of the outcome. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Excuse me. Gentleman from Charles.
Thank you, colleagues. I rise in opposition to this amendment on the basic belief that for anybody that believed without evidence that this election was stolen and that there was systemic voter fraud, there's no amendment that's going to change their mind. All right, I'm shocked when I hear people quoting polls after the 2020 and 2016 polls went so awry. So I put no faith in those polls. I put faith in the people. But there are groups of people. There are lunatic fringes that will never be satisfied, not with this amendment, not with anything we do. We don't have a perfect system, but we have the best in the world. These seeds of deception were sown. The deceit was repeated, and it's even being repeated now. It's causing this mass confusion. There is no silver bullet. There is no perfect election. There will always be individuals who try and beat the system. But to be confused about systemic voter fraud at this point with no evidence is offensive. I understand my colleagues' need, but again, with zero evidence, we can't keep walking down this path. That's the damaging part for my country that I've fought for, is it's confusing some very nice people into thinking that they were tricked and that they were robbed. Because months before that election, a U.S. president told them he was going to be stolen, told him he was going to be that he was going to lose, and it was going to be fraudulent. And make no mistake, there are Democrats that believe there is voter fraud, that some of the lines were too long, that there were fake ballot boxes, that there were early closings, because there were. Make it very clear, this is not a perfect system. But make no mistake, it's the best in the world. We have no systemic voter fraud. We cannot keep, and I ask my colleagues, stop doing this. This is a country that I love, that my friends died for. And now I look out and I see people who really believe that this isn't our president, with no facts. This amendment will change none of their minds. Nothing but time and the good grace of God will change those minds. So I ask you to reject this amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Anne Arundel, Baltimore County in the annex.
Oh, yes, so sorry. Yeah, I forgot. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. I'm just going to bring it back down from the fever pitch we were just at. This amendment has nothing to do specifically with anything that has occurred in only the last election cycle, but has everything to do with what people on my side of the aisle have been talking about for, 20 or 30 years. And just for a moment, I'd like to regale the body with this information. countries that require voter ID: Argentina, Brazil, France, Finland, Germany, Greece, Hungary. We're not asking for something that isn't common practice. When my husband, who I've mentioned before, came to this country, he first could not vote. He was not a citizen. He had a student visa, then he had an H-1B visa. Then he applied for his green card. He was finally granted citizenship. And when he got to vote in his first election, he was horrified that no one would check his ID. Because in the country he grew up in, not only when you go to vote do you have to show your ID, but when the ballot box, which is paper ballot only, is counted, a representative from every party, which in that country there's 4 or 5 or more, must be present and must count the ballots. That is how seriously they take their election integrity. So no, please don't lambaste us for any of the fringe movements that we've seen in the last 12 months. That's not what this is about. We have been saying this for 30 years. We are not asking for too much. We are not asking for something that is unusual. This is common practice all over the world. It makes the voters feel like they are sure their votes counted and that no one who has ill will has extra votes counted. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just wanted to also comment and rise in support of this amendment for voter ID. And I also wanted to rebut some of the things that we heard from my good friend from Charles County. First of all, the bill is about a permanent absentee ballot list. Think about it, permanent absentee ballot list, which means that you receive an absentee ballot permanently mailed to you. That's the bill. The amendment is for voter ID. Now, as I previously mentioned, my household, we received 4 ballots, and 4 people do not live in my household. So how would the State Board of Elections know, and how would the local Board of Elections know if those ballots were indeed cast by the individuals who should have been casting them? Well, because we don't have voter integrity and we don't have voter ID, which helps with voter integrity. So it seems kind of straightforward to me that if you, the majority party in Maryland, really want to have conversations about making things better in the state and moving forward in a way where we can be confident that elections are free and fair and verifiable, then you will no doubt vote for this amendment. Because I know I am, and it's long overdue, and I'm tired of the division, and I'm also tired, as the maker of the amendment said, of seeing these polls, but also seeing the radicalism on both sides, where people say they don't trust elections. Here is our chance to fix some of that right now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate?
I move the amendment, Madam Speaker. Or Madam Speaker.
Yes. Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I urge the body to support the amendment. I move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Roll call,
Ayes
Madam
have it.
Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Any other amendment to the bill?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a quick question for the floor leader, just for clarification. Hi there.
Hello.
So with the permanent absentee ballot list, the individuals who would be requesting this, many of them would be individuals, I presume, who are unable to get to the ballot box and elderly and so forth. Is that fair to say?
People would have many different reasons, but certainly,
Certainly that's one of them.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Madam Speaker, I do have an amendment at the desk, and it is amendment number, if I can read it, 793427/1.
Amendment number 1.
Be so much be considered the reading of the amendment, Madam Speaker.
So ordered.
Get that out. So this amendment's very simple. It says that the State Board of Elections or a local board. Well, because many of the people whose names are on the permanent absentee ballot list are the most vulnerable among us and the most likely to receive pressure from potential third parties that want to go ahead and try to do what? Bad idea to have this list available to the general public for that reason. I think it really opens up the door for the potential of hurting the elderly, but also for the potential, for obvious reasons, of fraud, because it makes it so easy to ballot harvest. And so, Madam Speaker, seems like a pretty straightforward amendment to me, and for that reason, I definitely think that it's a great idea to put this amendment on the bill. Thank you.
The sponsor of the bill and the subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think when it comes to this amendment, as I mentioned, we work very closely with the State Board of Elections on this bill. And I think that this is an issue that the State Board of Elections, when they develop their guidelines for this bill, should address. And so in order for us to maintain that flexibility and for all of the points around the publicity and public availability of the list to be addressed, I urge us to leave that to the State Board of Elections, and I urge the body to resist this amendment.
The gentleman from Talbot in the annex.
Thank you, Speaker, and I apologize, colleagues. I'm not trying to show horse today. This issue, though, for me is just magnanimous. I can't even say it. It's so big. I mean, on the Eastern Shore, we used to have one representative for every county. We used to have one representative for every county. That changed and forever changed the dynamic of this body that we're in right now. And you heard earlier. Our elections aren't perfect. There are problems with them. Nobody argues about that. I mean, there are problems, and we know ballot harvesting is a problem. It's such a problem that there are articles about campaign strategy folks that have made a career out of ballot harvesting and affecting elections. Now, you're probably thinking about this in the context maybe of a presidential election, of a congressional election, or maybe a House of Delegates election, Well, take it down to the granular. Think about your municipal elections. Places like Cambridge, Easton, Salisbury. How much does it take to tip the scales? So the amendment makes perfect sense because it's already patterned in practice. People are out there doing this. This amendment wasn't crafted. It's not very innovative. I mean, it's been around. I mean, it's right there in front of you. This is how elections are done. We know this goes on, right? Does anybody not know this does not go on? Does anybody deny it? So let's do something about it. If you're going to move forward, let's at least acknowledge the reality that we live in. We are in Annapolis, and I understand sometimes the air gets a little cloudy and it's hard to see, to see clearly. But just take a second, take a deep breath. Think about the election cycles you all have been through. Now think about the election cycles of your we spent so much time talking about elections, right? The last couple of days. Well, think about this. You know, the numbers and how important this issue is and how it can be manipulated and influenced. Now, saying that the Board of Elections is going to pass regulations to prevent that, right? Okay, so you're admitting to us, you're admitting right now this needs to be done. So why wait for the Board of Elections? Why put them through the pain and the agony of drafting the regulations? Why spend the money? Why wait the time? You know, we got redistricting coming up. There's a census. The world isn't going to stop and wait, right? So just do it right now. This is easy. It should be bipartisan. This is good government. It is transparent. It's right in front of you. You know, maybe it isn't that critical, but it is absolutely critical. And I'm not arguing right now to showboat. I don't need the microphone anymore. I'm here for my kids. That's why I'm here. They want to know where they're going to grow up. They're going to know what their world's like. I talk to my children right now. They talk to me about different forms of government and what's going on. And they confuse what's happening here in our own country with some of the things they're being taught about other forms of government around the world. They can't understand kind of what's happening. I worry for them. So this vote, when I support this amendment, it's as much for my children as it is for everyone else in this room. I urge the amendment. I appreciate the sponsor of the amendment, and thank you for the time.
Any further debate?
Move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker,
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails.
Madam Speaker, I have one more amendment.
Recognize.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the moving of the amendment.
So
Reading of the
ordered.
amendment. So this particular amendment, ladies and gentlemen, is very straightforward as well. Given the fact that the bill in question has a permanent absentee ballot list, meaning that automatically you're going to receive a ballot every election, whether you request it or not, and whether you live here or not anymore. This particular amendment says that you cannot ballot harvest. Seems pretty straightforward. In the 2020 election, one of the biggest concerns was that people were ballot harvesting. And ballot harvesting involves doing just that, going door to door and saying, hey, look, I know you're not going to vote, but I'm going to give you $10 or $20 for your ballot, and I'll vote for you. It's why, in the previous amendment, I thought it was a bad idea to be able to have this absentee ballot list available, because it literally promotes ballot harvesting. In my opinion, that is its purpose. But we know that with this amendment, we're saying no more ballot harvesting. It can't be allowed except under the current section in the law, which is 9-308, where someone actually needs you to get their ballot to the post office or to the election board, and they need that because they are incapacitated, incapable of getting there. So it takes that into account, this particular amendment. But here's the thing. If you think it's okay for people to go door to door and collect ballots en masse and pay people for their ballots, mark those ballots for them, and drop them off in ballot drop boxes or to the election board, then we have no way of going forward knowing that we're going to have free and fair elections. So once again, This amendment's very straightforward. It says no more ballot harvesting. It's probably that single thing in the 2020 election that has made so many people feel like our elections are fundamentally not fair. Ballot harvesting is wrong. Ballot harvesting encourages cheating, and it encourages fraud by paying people for ballots that they otherwise would not be casting. So for all those reasons, Madam Speaker, I think this is a great idea to add on to this bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker,
Chairman of the committee.
I'd like to add one more thing about ballot harvesting. It's already illegal. Madam Speaker, I'd like to get back to the point of this bill. Everyone's talking fraud here, fraud there, and let's remember what this bill is about. It's about enhancing people's voting opportunities, and most of these amendments have been trying to create barriers to those opportunities. But in the case of this amendment, it simply is trying to make law something that already is law. Thank you.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in support of this amendment just for this simple reason. The good delegate from Charles County eloquently and emotionally said we do not have a perfect system, and he's 100% correct. But when we have the opportunity to make this imperfect system just a little bit better for a free and fair election, we should take it and seize on that opportunity. I think that's what this amendment does. I press the amendment.
Madam Speaker, just to finish,
The
I know we're over.
The maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, folks, what we just heard from the Chair of Ways and Means of the great state of Maryland is ballot harvesting is legal. It's not illegal. So actually, in section 9308 of the code, there are exceptions, and in some ways, those exceptions make sense. What we have an opportunity to do is to actually strengthen the law so that these actions won't take place. So technically, there's no way of being able to catch people, and there's no way of knowing unless we strengthen the law. That's all this is trying to do. Seems pretty straightforward. Seems like this is something that we should be doing since all last year, and for the past few months, this is all we've been seeing on TV. Honestly, I don't care what channel you watch on the news, this is what you see. Let's fix it. Let's fix it in this state. So, Madam Speaker, for all those reasons, I move the amendment. Thank you.
Recognizing the sponsor of the bill and the subcommittee chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I would just like to emphasize for the body that what the delegate is describing is already not legal, illegal. There is an entire process in order to be a designated agent. And someone that I think about often, and one of the reasons why I'm really proud to sponsor this bill, is a constituent who called me right before Election Day, who missed the deadline for deadline for her absentee ballot and had no options because of her disability to be able to vote in any other way. She needed an agent on her behalf. This agent process helps people. It's a process where there is a form. You have to fill it out. You sign it. The person goes on your behalf. There's an entire process. What the delegate is describing is not that process, and what he is describing is already illegal, and that is why we do not need this amendment. I urge the body to resist it.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Roll
Those
call,
in-
Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Clerk would take the call. The amendment fails. Any other amendments to the bill suicidal? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know this is no longer a requirement, but I'm going to go ahead and announce a vote change on HB 742 from red to green. Thank you.
Madam Speaker,
Gentleman from Western Maryland.
in all seriousness, I often say, we say a lot about we're the first in the nation, we're the only in the nation, and I often say sometimes if we're the only person that thinks that we're right, maybe we're not right. And so I believe in my position, I articulated my position, but in the interest of comedy and out of recognition of the losses that some of these folks certainly suffered, I'd like to change my vote on HB 742 to green. Thank you.
Now we have a unanimous vote on 742. That ends the work at the desk. All committee bill hearings are listed on the Maryland General Assembly website. Quorum call before adjournment.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? Clerk will take the call. There being 134 members present, the House is still in session. Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand adjourned until Friday, March 5th at 10 a.m., Legislative Day, February 29th.